This week on the Nittany Dispatch, we discuss Penn State's position groups and where they stand heading into the season, and our top 5 most important games of Penn State's 2025 season. This week on the Nittany Dispatch. Hello and welcome to the Nittany Dispatch. I am John Sauber, Penn State beat writer of the Central Daily Times. She is Audrey Snyder, doing the same at InsideTheLines.substack.com, where I cannot recommend subscribing enough. I am a subscriber.
Tongue, doesn't it? It just rolls off the tongue.
It's getting easier to say. After
I'm proud of you.
I think I flubbed it a few times in some previous episodes that went unaired. But no, we are here. I mean, Penn State seven practices in, right, Audrey, to fall camp.
We were at practice 7 Thursday night, so by the time you're hearing this, the train will keep on moving.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, it is. We are in the thick of it. We've seen Penn State on the practice field twice so far. We'll next hear from James Franklin on Tuesday, so that'll be our next viewing window. So John and I are here just to pass the time today and also kind of get everybody geared up for this season. And we want to kind of refresh some minds, get some cobwebs out, get in the weeds a little bit, all the things that we love to do here at the Nittany Dispatch.
Yeah, so we're gonna do 2 separate. I hesitate to call them games. We'll call them rankings, whatever you like to call them. One of the position groups at Penn State, we'll rank every position. We kept offensive line as one cohesive unit. We separated out defensive line to defensive end, defensive tackle. It's important to note as we go through this, and then we'll rank our top 5 most important games later. But I think it's fair to start at the top with the position group, and we'll get right into this. A little less bantery than usual because this might be a long one, if depending on how long-winded we both get, because we both are, and it's tough to avoid. Yeah. But I'll let you go first, Audrey. What is the position group you are most confident in at Penn State heading into this season?
Yeah, I say I hope this will be on the same top of your list too, but I don't know, because sometimes you come up with some really interesting or weird things.
I have some takes.
Yes, and we're going to get into those today, I'm sure.
Yeah.
The position group that I am most confident in heading into the season is the running backs. I think you look at it and you say, okay, Nick Singleton, Katron Allen, 1A, 1B. Even if you go deeper into that third running back competition, right? Whether it's Quentin Martin or Corey Smith or Cam Wallace, who we saw out there this week, who looked good. He was back, and it was really nice to see him back out there again after that season-ending injury last September. So he is certainly in the mix there. I just think they have depth top to bottom. Now, in 2026, we will be talking probably a lot differently about this group. But I just think when you have that much depth and talent in one room, Stan Drayton, it's a luxury of riches. He inherited such a group. So I got running backs at 1. And it really sounds like you do not. Yeah, you don't agree with me, of course.
Yeah, but so this is important to note that my top 4, I would argue even 5, I think people would push back on my 5th, are all position groups that I'm really confident in. That I think Penn State might have some of the best players in college football, not just at the top spot, but potentially at the second spot in positions where you start more than one guy. I have running backs 3rd. But that being said, I am very, very confident in this running back room. It is. I mean, they have the best 1-2 punch in the country. I think that goes without saying at this point. They have 2 guys who are going to be chasing Penn State's all-time rushing record, too, which I think is going to be fascinating to watch play out throughout the season. But they also have the complement, right? Like we talk about this all the time, but Nick Singleton and Katron Allen are 2 very different backs. You don't have to worry about, like, what spots do you use certain guys in. You know where you're going to be using each of those guys. They're also good enough that if something happens to the other and they miss a snap or 2, they can fill the other guy's role too at that same high level. And so you mentioned it. This really is about the 3rd running back spot. And I think Cam Wallace is a very good 3rd running back. He's my pick as of now to be the guy coming off a pretty severe injury last year. We saw him on the field in a wheelchair post game after, he injured both of his legs essentially. On one play. And so I think he is going to come back with a vengeance. I think he's going to have a legitimate role in this offense. Now, they're not going to be running, like 32 personnel or anything like that frequently with 3 running backs out there. But I think when he gets in there, he'll be productive on those snaps. You'll notice a drop off, but it'll be drop off to like a regular quality starter level player. Because I think that's what Wallace is. I think if Singleton and Allen had left, that he could have been a quality starter this year. And when that's your 3rd guy on the depth chart in all likelihood, I think it's obviously a very positive sign.
A very positive sign, but you still didn't put him at number 1, John. I am going to let me guess your number 1 because the more you riffed about the running backs and how much my pick makes the most sense, I remembered that you've got a massive man crush
Not number
on
one.
AJ.
I already
Oh, man, so it's not the corners. Okay, that was. Go ahead, floor is yours. You're most confident in what position group?
the offensive line. I think this is the best offensive line in the country. I think they have not just 6 like starters. I think they have 6 guys who the baseline is good college football starter, and 6 is a minimum. By the way, I think there could be more guys beyond that top 6, but the top 6 is Drew Shelton at left tackle, Venga Ioane at left guard, Nick Dawkins at center. We'll see who between Anthony Donka and Cooper Cousins at right guard. I would lean Donka right now being the starting right guard, and then Nolan Rucci at right tackle, with the caveat that Donko is also an elite tackle, right? Like the position this program is in when it comes to the offensive line is so drastically different than where it was a decade ago. Like when Derek Dowry and Brian Gaia had to flip sides of the ball and start on the offensive line because they just didn't have line. James talked about he was trying to remember how many they had. He believes they had 4 offensive linemen on the roster at the time when he got to Penn State, which is unheard of, right? To try and produce a good line with those kind of numbers.
And yeah, I am with you. I am really jazzed on this offensive line. It's talented. It's deep. I mean, the fact that
but you don't have them number 1.
Saying jazzed.
No.
Yeah, because I mean, sure, you can make the argument.
Where do you have them? It's important to know.
I have them at 3.
Okay.
I have them 3.
We probably have the same top group.
And the thing with that offensive line, yes, you're right. It is absolutely night and day from when James Franklin got here. If you want to know more about James Franklin in that first year, I had a Q&A up with him. It's still up there, actually. It's not going anywhere unless I hit the wrong button, but it's up on InsideTheLions.substack.com. And that was the premise for when I sat down with him in the summer. I said, I want to go back. You know, everybody's talking about this season and expectations and everybody's excited, but like, let's go back to when you got here and kind of all of that. And he agreed with my premise, which is that a lot of people have kind of forgotten about where this program was just because it had advanced on such a really quick trajectory. And we've dug into that before with 2016 and you beat Ohio State and how things change and people want more and more. Yeah, it's those offensive linemen flipping sides of the ball. I mean, it's Andrew Nelson, right? There's another guy I think people forget about who's now working for the program, doing a lot of like the sports science stuff, I believe, right? But he was one of those guys on that offensive line where early on those dog days where you're trying to figure out what you have. Ty Howell, of course, like I think there's really good perspective on that. But yeah, no, it is incredible the job that Phil Trautwein has done. I remember sitting down with Phil maybe his second year here, and it was still like, I was like, okay, how do you do this? Because even at that point, I think maybe fans are forgetting about this too, maybe. His first couple years here, there was a lot of heat on this offensive line. And how do you make this a strength? Well, this isn't one of those position groups where you can just kind of go at it and hope for the best. And again, this was also, when you go back to that early James Franklin era, this was pre-transfer portal. Like you couldn't just overhaul a room in a year, you know, or in a couple months in an off season. And that was also true during Phil Trautwein's early time here. And the fact that he's been here as long as he has, that he's committed to building. I mean, you look at the guys they've churned out into the NFL. I mean, that was such a crazy thought during those early days, right? It's the 10 sacks at Temple, and gosh, I remember.
It's really just the 10 sacks at Temple. That is that's what everyone thinks of.
But I think that's a really good point that I hope fans remember this season is how far this program has come. Because it's part of the narrative.
Yes, and with this group specifically, like we talk about weak links. I don't know. Nick Dawkins is probably the worst of the group, and I'm confident that he's a good starting center. Like that's a
hell of a leader too. Yeah.
Yes, like and a great communicator, which is important specifically at center. You know, and it's helped Drew Aller out a lot too with being vocal and everything like that. But yeah, this is I don't know. I think they have a legit chance to win the Joe Moore Award at the end of the year, and that's why, to me, it's the combination of upside with this group, because I do think they have multiple first-round picks on this offensive line. I think Donk is going to end up being a first-rounder when he leaves. I think Drew Shelton's going to be a first-rounder when he leaves. I think Venga Ioane is a potential first guard off the board. Guards tend to go a little later on occasion, but I think he has a chance to be the first guard off the board when he enters the draft. Same with Cooper Cousins. Like, I think a lot of these guys have that level of upside. It's the baseline that I already think that they're elite as a unit, and it's the importance, right? Like, I think I put a little bit of weight into that, not a ton, but to me, having an elite offensive line is more important than having elite running backs, because you can have an elite running back and still have a bad running game. If you have an elite offensive line, you probably have a good running game, right? Like that.
I mean, you could have your best position group on the team could be the running backs, and they could be running behind an elite offensive line, and you could say that's the case for them to be the most confident position group. But hey, to each his own.
That's why this might be the best team in the country, because they have both of those things along with some other talent on the offense. But I think I know based on what you said earlier. Let's move on to number 2. I think we probably have the same number 2 here based on what you projected for me.
No, we don't.
Unbelievable.
So
I'm guessing
corners at 2.
Yes, I have the cornerbacks at 2. Who do you have at 2?
Quarterback.
All right, this is interesting. I have quarterback at 5. It's not a knock on Drew Aller. We'll go into quarterbacks, then we'll get into the corners.
You're taking a knock on the rest of the room because you're projecting that he's going to get hurt.
It is right. It's the idea that if he misses time, it just kind of might be over for Penn State. And there's a little bit.
Well, folks, you don't need to listen anymore here. That's the end of the
show. I am confident in Drew Aller, but I also know that there are some lows that he can hit too that I think some of these other position groups are more insulated from. Right, like as the corners are protected from AJ Harris having a bad game by the fact that they have other corners. If Drew Aller has a bad game, it's kind of over, and they can't afford for that to happen.
The more you talk, John, the more I do feel wrong on this already. Again,
John's right. What a surprise!
Oh God, our producer's gonna put this in this is gonna be the clip people are gonna see on social media.
Yeah, clip this.
Bells and whistles. T-Rex arms might have a point.
All right, 11 minutes and 30 seconds in. Let's clip this part right here where Audrey admits she's wrong.
I get it, but I think the Drew Aller high is Heisman campaign. And that to me is not many teams in the country you can realistically say that. Now, when you get into that backup quarterback spot, right? That's one of those legitimate camp competitions that we're seeing play out that James Franklin even said, don't expect them to name that number 2 quarterback heading into the season. This is something
it could change week to week.
Yes, and with this cakewalk non-conference schedule, you're going to get plenty of looks at your backup quarterbacks too. You're going to see a lot of Ethan Grunkemeyer and a lot of Jackson Smolik in September. And that's important. That's really important for next year. Yes, you don't have Bo Prapula out there to kind of trot out in those specialty packages either, so that changes some things. But I think the upside of Aller is why I'd put him there.
I think it needs to be said. I think the Bo Prabula stuff and even the Tyler Warren ways they use him, I think it's so overstated, right? It was impactful in moments, but Andy Kotelnicki's still there, right? The creativity's still there. That's why that was impactful. Yes, it takes a special talent in Tyler Warren to do some of the stuff he did specifically, but with Prabula, I think he's probably an above average starting quarterback, and having that as your backup is obviously a very good thing. But I think those specific packages, I don't think that this offense is gonna miss those. I don't think it's going to be an issue at all. That being said, what you said is why I have the quarterbacks 5th, right? I feel good about Ethan Grunkemeyer being a starting level quarterback. Maybe not this year, but next year. Jackson Smolik makes me a little nervous. I'm curious to know why that kind of is close, because again, we are very limited viewing windows when we practice. Right. But he just doesn't have the same zip on his throws as Grunkemeyer does. And I think some of the anticipation throws can leave you a little wanting. And I think that was a thing in high school too, which it is for most high school quarterbacks, to be fair. But I have them 5th, and I said at the top that I am pretty confident in probably 4, but I think 5 of these groups, and I'm confident in Drew Aller. I think he's an elite quarterback, and I think he can lead them to a national title. And I don't really have any qualms with having them as high. Frankly, I think you can make an argument to have them 1 because of the importance of the position and how good the best player is. Because most teams are cooked if their starter goes down. That's important to note too. The backups probably don't really matter at any
especially in this day and age. Yeah, and this with the transfer portal, it's you don't have that, especially at quarterbacks. You don't have that starting guy just waiting in the wings.
Yeah, and I think there's an argument to be made that the importance should if you're confident in them at all, it should rise them up your rankings. But that being said, I do have corner at number 2. As you said, I think AJ Harris is the best corner in the country. I thought he had an argument for it last year. There has been a lot of hype around Elliott Washington and how he's performed in camp, both in fall and spring. I think Zion Tracy is going to be a difference maker at that nickel corner spot. And that's, if you'd like to read more about that, you can find that at centerdaily.com. I actually published a story Friday morning on that and the use of the fifth defensive back. But I think that is going to help get more of those guys on the field. I'm really confident in Tracy in that position and how they're going to use him and the kind of plays he can make in Jim Knowles' defense. But mostly, I'm incredibly confident that AJ Harris, Elliott Washington, and Davian Collins are going to be one of the best cornerback rooms in the country. And if you think I'm being repetitive when I say that this is one of the best in the country, well, this might be the best team in the country. So it makes sense that across several position groups that, that's where we rank them, right? Like that, They have some of the best guys in the country, because we're going to get down lower on this list. I have position groups at 6 and 7 that I think they also might have guys who are at the best in the country where the depth is more of a concern. But yeah, I think the corners are going to be excellent. I think that having Jim Knowles as the defensive coordinator to vary some of the coverages that they run, that they're not so man dependent in coverage, I think that's going to help this group take another step. And Harris talked about in the spring, like the kind of mental aspect of the game and how Knowles has helped him evolve in that way. But I just think if you get incremental progress from everyone in the room, that you're easily, top 5, top 10 in the country at corner. If you get anything beyond that, I think you're in the conversation at the very top of the list. And I think, to me, corner is a pretty important position too, which me having confidence in them means that I'm more confident in this team overall.
Because you're already circling the AJ Harris, Jeremiah Smith Halloween weekend in
I
Columbus.
certainly am.
Get your popcorn ready.
I don't think that's going to be – I think in years past we would have seen those two go head-to-head. I think Knowles is going to be creative and, it's not going to just be Smith against Harris. They're going to do some things to make life difficult for Jeremiah Smith as much as you can for someone that is the best receiver that we've seen in since maybe Larry Fitzgerald.
Very long time. Yeah, remember, because that was all of the hype a few years ago. It was the Joey Porter Jr., Marvin Harrison Jr., and everybody was like, oh, we're going to get this. And then, we didn't – I think it was Porter, if I'm recalling correctly. And then we didn't get that matchup very often. And it was just like, oh, that was sometimes the way these things play out. Now, I had the corners as I glanced at my list, I had them at 4. However, that is 4 with an insane amount of confidence. And I spoke with Terry Smith Thursday night after practice. And after leaving that conversation, and so I wanted to make sure recency bias didn't impact my very official most to least confidence rankings. But after leaving that conversation, I almost got on here today and put them at number 1 because Terry Smith is that confident in his group. Again, this guy gets more than the benefit of the doubt over time with the cornerbacks that they've produced. I want to throw this out there too for fans. Terry Smith said, and anybody who's been following closely, this is a 4-2-5 base defense, right? They're going to have strength in that secondary. Zion Tracy is going to be the starter in the nickel, and they call it a starter because it is, and they play starter level reps. AJ Harris is your number 1, and then you've got this camp competition between Davian Collins and why am I blanking on the name? Oh, and Elliott Washington II. Duh.
I was going to leave you out on the line on that one.
that's going to be my finest clip, right? Between Elliott Washington II and Davian Collins. Now, with Elliott Washington, Terry Smith said that he believes Washington is slingshotting into stardom. And I was like, oh, okay. Now, he says that, and then he goes, but you know what? Davian Collins might be having the best camp of anyone. So, this is a really good group. And also, they're very confident with the 6 cornerbacks that they have. So, it's those 4, and then Kenny Wosley Jr. and Darius Dixon, the freshman from Mater Dei High School, had a pick 6 at practice on Thursday. And Terry Smith said that, Dixon is one of those guys that he's bringing it and that he's showing them that he is ready. And we haven't gotten to the red light, green light, yellow light freshman conversation. This guy's playing.
Justin Lustig said Thursday night that essentially that Darius Dixon is going to be a starter on some special teams units, which and he said by the end of the year could be multiple special teams units, which indicates to me that they're going to burn his red shirt and he's going to play a lot. You mentioned having 6 corners. They may want to rotate that spot enough that he gets enough reps on defense that it makes it worth it too. But yeah, I think Wosley's important there too, because if I had to pick right now as a backup to Tracy in the slot, it's probably Wosley. And it's, it could be Colin Dinkins too. He's got a lot of praise in recent years, starting out as a walk-on, obviously Khalil Dinkins' brother. But I do think that it'll be Wosley and Tracy primarily at the spot, with Tracy as the starter in what should be one of the best corner rooms in the country. Now, that takes us to, I believe we're at my number 4. We've gone through your top 4 already.
Yep.
My number 4 is tight end. And I think that might surprise some people that I'm that confident in tight end. But the depth is so strong at the position that I'm confident in Khalil Dinkins. Like James Franklin said a lot that we're not talking enough about Khalil Dinkins. He might be
Big
right
dink.
on that. Yeah, he might be right in saying that we're not talking about him enough. But I don't know. I think Dinkins is going to be an important part of this offense. I think he's a better athlete than people realize, because he's been portrayed as sort of this blocking tight end because he's such a willing blocker and such, frankly, an elite blocker for the college level. But he's a very good receiver. I will be curious to see if that trust is there, like it was with Tyler Warren, because he is, there's some level of you just got to trust the guy to bring it in and contest and catch situations when maybe the separation isn't perfect. But if he has that with Drew Aller, I think Dinkins has a chance to be, a breakout player for Penn State this year. I think he could have, I don't think it's outside the realm of possibility that he's one of the top 2 or 3 leading receivers, even with the overhauled wide receiver room. And that's not a knock on the wideouts. It's more about him and what he's capable of. Going beyond him, Andrew Rappleyea and Luke Reynolds are both starting level tight ends. And you have that as your number 2 and your number 3 right now. And so I think no matter what happens, they could lose a guy and still go out and play 12 personnel at a high level, much like they did last year. And so I think this, the ceiling is probably a little bit lower at tight end than maybe the other groups that we have listed, or that I have listed in my top 5. But I think the floor is incredibly high. And I think that they're going to get the job done week in and week out. It might look a little different. They might be asked to do different things, but consistently they're going to get the job done because of the depth and because of the variety of skill sets in that depth.
Because of the depth and because of the dink, right?
Yes. Yes.
They're going to have a lot of fun with that this year.
Yes, there are going to be some student section signs. I'm confident in that.
If they don't bring the big dink energy, what are we even doing here, John? Why would you even have a student section? What's the point? You
said it, not me.
Hey, I mean, listen, you have big dink, you have little dink in the secondary. You've got a lot of options. Just saying.
You do.
I have tight ends at 5 on my list, so we're pretty close on that.
We have the same top 5 then.
We did, yes. Look at
we're not in the same order, but we have the same 5 groups.
The same 5 that we feel most confident. As always, John and I don't rehearse any of this.
Yes.
As if you ever saw the behind the scenes of this, it's, hey, can we record it this time? What about this time? We settle on a time, and the next day we change the time. Sometimes once, usually twice. Yeah.
That's why the people love us. We recorded an hour earlier today than we originally planned, because I am inconsistent. Yes.
Hey, same here. But yeah, I mean, I think the Andrew Rappleyea recovering from last year's season-ending injury, that's one of the biggest storylines this preseason. I'm really curious to get more eyes on him. The more we see of camp, and also the more, non-conference play. I mean, I think, and we heard about this with Cam Wallace too, but there's that mental hurdle for a lot of these guys when you're coming off of those season-ending injuries and you have to get out there. And a lot of times you'll hear guys say, yeah, it's not really till I get hit or till I get back into a game that you feel like you've arrived. I am very high on Luke Reynolds as well. I think fans are going to remember him last year for the Minnesota game and that moment. I think that is just a glimpse of what's to come and what he's capable of. I mean, they've got freak athletes. Again, we got to see, if, and James Franklin has said it many times, and I'm sure he will continue to, if that second tight end is better than the wide receiver, then they're going to roll out the 12 personnel, and we're going to see them keep doing it that way. So that's, I think, when you look at the numbers, that's how it shakes out. Now, John, recapping my top 5, I went running back, quarterback, O-line, cornerback, and tight end. So I'm giving a lot of love to Andy Kotelnicki's offense right now.
Yes, and honestly, mine is pretty much the same. O-line, cornerback, running back, tight end, quarterback. 4 of the 5 for both of us are on the offense, which is not what you'd expect. I also think it is a good look at where we both think this team stands. We're both confident in them on both sides of the ball. But I think part of that confidence defensively is more about Jim Knowles than it is about the depth of personnel, which we'll get into. And we can start getting into that with my number 6, which is defensive end.
Wait. We finally aligned on something. That's my 6 too.
Okay, so I think we can be pretty quick here then. The argument is fairly simple. Deny Dennis Sutton, stop me if you've heard this before, is one of the best in the country at his position. The problem is, beyond that, it gets a little bit more dicey, right? Like, I think Zariah Fisher is a good starter, but losing Max Granville for the season hurts. You don't know what you're getting from the rest of the group. Anai White is now at defensive tackle, which we'll talk about that, I'm sure, in pretty short order here. But you don't have quite the depth that you have at, other positions that are above this. You have the elite guy in Deny Dennis Sutton. You have the quality starter in Zariah Fisher. I just kind of don't know what comes next, and that makes me a little bit nervous.
I am with you 100% on all of that. I think the loss of Granville is significant. And, when it happened earlier on this summer, it's like, okay, yeah, this is going to sting. But once you really start to dial it in, you say, yeah, this is like even worse than maybe some fans initially thought, just in terms of this is a guy who was really coming on last year during the playoff run, looked really good. And then you see him in the spring and you're thinking, yeah, like this is one of those, impact players. But yeah, Zariah Fisher is in line to start opposite Deny. And I think you can look at the Anai White position switch in a couple of different ways, maybe a few different lenses. I think there's the one school of thought that says, well, Penn State must really like what they have at DN or else they don't make that position switch. Then you have the other side of that, which is, well, long term, and James Franklin mentioned this, he's like, yeah, he's been 275 without even trying. And Franklin even said that this is someone that they could use if they want to have like a big D end, which we've seen them do in the past. They could bounce him outside and make those adjustments based on the opponent. So I think depending how you look at the Anai White position switch, you can maybe think and say, oh yeah, maybe they feel better about these ends than they really do. But that being said, when you have, I think it's going to be a first round pick and Deny Dennis Sutton in that group, you got to put him here. And I think he is going to be lights out. You and I both talked to him at Media Day last week, spent a good bit of time chatting with him about kind of his motivations and the fact that Deion Barnes is sending him some of these things that are being said about the defensive line and, hey, why aren't you on X, Y, and Z watch list and those kinds of things. You have an absolute stud, but then you have some question marks in that room too.
Yeah, and I think the question marks really start with the backups, like is Malachi Williams, Jalen Harvey, Mason Robinson, Ivan Kamaju, right, is a true freshman. Like, are those guys who's got to step up and kind of take on a role? Because you can't really ask Deny Dennis Sutton and Zariah Fisher to play every single snap out there. I would think they're going to want to rotate, especially Fisher, who's coming off some several injuries, basically. And so you kind of want to lighten the workload a little bit and give them an opportunity. We'll see. That's something I think that we're both going to be monitoring the rest of fall camp, who steps up, who is kind of in position to be even the third guy in that group. To just, even if you get one more guy that can rotate in, you can split the reps a little bit more, have it be 3 ways instead of 2. I think that could be really important. I think that is probably true of my next position group too, though, right? And that is at number 7, defensive tackle, where I have
my list. Did you try and steal my list?
I think those were always the 2 most likely. I think our bottom 3 are probably not the same, but I think the defensive line, it's the same thing, right? It's a mirror of the defensive end group. You have Zane Durant, who I'm confident is an elite talent, an elite defensive tackle. I think could be a first-round pick despite the size, just because the power, the athleticism, the explosiveness is unbelievable for someone at his size, someone that's listed at only 6'1", essentially, and I think sub 290 still or around there. He's listed at 294, but again, at 6'1", that is he's massive, right? And he's incredibly strong. But beyond him, there are some questions. And I think Alonzo Ford is the Zariah Fisher of this group. He's a quality starting defensive tackle, also coming back from injury. And so you need to see how he handles that and if he has the same kind of explosiveness that he displayed. I actually think he has a little more upside than Fisher. I think he could be a legitimate impact player at defensive tackle. But again, then you get into a group that's, Owen Weifel, Xavier Gilliam, like guys that Ty Blanding, guys that Penn State is hoping to step up, but don't have in-game reps. You really haven't seen a ton. You're not certain exactly what it's going to look like. There is upside there, though. I think Gilliam is someone especially that could end up being, not unseating, obviously, Durant or Ford, but really putting a dent in the snaps. And if I'm looking at one guy to step up, it's probably him. But yeah, this is definitely a high end at the top, quality in the second spot, and then mixed bag, and who knows what you're going to get beyond that.
Yeah, I agree on all fronts, and I think then it goes back to, again, where does an I White fit into this position group, right? What's that process like? What's that transition like? But yeah, I mean, when you have Zane Durant, you have one of the most explosive, one of the freakiest players in all of college football. I was watching the defensive linemen specifically this week's practice on Thursday, and again, you're around these guys quite a bit in interview settings, and you're watching the games and all that kind of stuff. But when you're standing there on the practice field, you're about 4 or 5 feet away, you are like, my goodness, these are some massive human beings. And I consistently have that same thought when I see Dennis Sutton and when I see Zane Durant. I mean, it is just, these guys are built different. And so, yeah, I think when you look at Durant and the way that we both expect that he's going to play, I think it solidifies our case on this spot. But John, I think this is going to be the danger zone here for our bottom 3.
This is where I have real questions. There are 2 players that I'm extremely confident in these 3 position groups. Outside of that, we just don't know enough. My number 8 is linebacker, and that's where Tony Rojas is a guy that I'm pretty confident in, but again, was probably more inconsistent in 2024 than people realized. It was not his best season.
Hurt. That's the other part that gets overlooked, I think, with a lot of the Rojas discourse. But anyway.
Yeah, and the upside's enormous. He's an unbelievable athlete. Everybody knows that. He just is out of position a little too frequently or was, at least in 2024, a little too frequently for my liking, and got caught kind of over pursuing. But I do think he can be a high level linebacker. That being said, I know I'm sure Penn State fans don't want to hear this, but linebacker to me is just not that important of a position, right? It just doesn't. It's not going to impact the game as much as defensive line or secondary will, especially in Jim Knowles' defense, because getting to the quarterback and stopping receivers are the 2 most important things in college football. Yes, you need to be able to stop the run, but when you're at a base 4-2-5, when you're only going to have 2 linebackers out there, they're just not going to mean as much. And so Rojas, I do think, can be that next linebacker great that people are talking about for years to come. But beyond that, there's been a lot of hype for Amari Campbell. He's a little undersized. That worries me a little bit, especially if you're going to, be in a 4-2-5 pretty frequently. But again, you want guys who can move. You want guys who can react and are smart players out there. And so it's going to be between Campbell and Dom DeLuca for that second spot in all likelihood. And DeLuca has athleticism disadvantages that we know about. If he gets caught in space, he's going to have trouble. He's a really good downhill player. He's a good tackler. But how often are you going to have him going downhill, right? It's asking him to drop into coverage and do different things that Jim Knowles is going to ask. You need to hit a kind of baseline of athleticism that I don't know that DeLuca gets to. And if it were me, just based on the limited window we've seen from watching guys play, I would start Rojas and Campbell because of that. And I think Rojas and Campbell have the instincts and the coverage ability to be really good there. But I question how good Campbell can be because of the size issues and because of potential struggles in the running game. Even if he is aggressive and he's willing to stick his nose in there, and the depth beyond that, I have no confidence in. After, especially, I'm already worried about Campbell and DeLuca. Beyond that, Keon Wiley has missed a ton of time. Anthony Speck is young. I just don't know what this is going to look like.
Do you see little LeVar this year? Is Barrington in second?
I don't think so. Your Twitter photo of him that makes him look way bigger than he is. I think got the expectation. No, I'm not blaming you. To be clear, people just blew it out of proportion.
People went wild with that in the spring, and I literally foreground, background, it's just a matter of I was focusing on taking a photo of him, and
yes, and he's
not a giant, he's a big kid, but he's not a giant.
Yeah, he has small shoulder pads on that too, so it makes him look even bigger. But yeah, I think he could contribute on special teams. I do not expect him to play at linebacker. Frankly, I think he's probably going to be best as a pass rusher in his career, anyways. So you just keep adding weight and see what happens there. But yeah, I don't really have faith in this position group beyond Rojas, and even there, I'm a little bit nervous.
So you have linebackers at 8. I have linebackers at 9. So both of you are not not too hot on this crop of linebackers. I can hear Dan Connor screaming probably at both of us right now with some
Yes.
colorful language that we've heard on the practice field. Man,
Yes,
that
we
guy
have.
does not lack for intensity.
Dan Connor talks like I do, and that's not a compliment.
That's the highest praise coming from me.
Yeah.
I salute that. However, the position group that I have at 8th is the safeties.
Okay, so this is 10th for me.
Interesting. I feel really good about Wheatley.
I think Wheatley has a breakout year. I'm totally with you.
I feel really good about that. And then I don't know. And I think it's the King Mac is back. What happens there? We'll see. I mean, yes, he was here and looked good. Then he left, had a cup of coffee at Alabama. And how does he kind of figure in? That to me, it's my ranking on them has nothing to do with Wheatley. It's about the depth. It's about who else steps up because it's a lot of unknown right now.
Yeah, this is like defensive end and defensive tackle if there were a cliff after Dennis Sutton or Durant, right? Like, and safeties are going to be important in this defense. Everything Jim Knowles does in coverage is like going to be, predicated on what the back end can do. And I believe in Wheatley in that regard. He's obviously a former corner. We know that, but I think he's a potentially elite safety. I just have no idea what's coming after that. You mentioned King Mac, maybe Dejon Lane, maybe Vabu Toure, maybe we have not seen enough of any of these guys for me to have any sort of faith. And for a spot that is not just like going to play, like we're talking about starters, right? Like Antoine Belgrave Shorter, like Colin Dinkins, like guys, like it could be any of those guys. We really don't have a great feel for it yet. And I think that is a little bit concerning. And who knows? There's enough talent there that someone could step up and they could be, a starter level quality. And we're talking about this more like the defensive end or defensive tackle group than I have them currently, which is again 10th out of 10 in this confidence rankings. Like I'm nervous beyond Zakee Wheatley. And I don't know. I just think that if things go poorly this year, we might be able to point to the safeties outside of Wheatley and why things, they're the reason why things maybe fell apart if they do.
Yeah, I think anybody in this danger zone in this bottom 3, if the season kind of gets away
I just
from
don't
Penn
think
State,
I don't think linebacker matters enough.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I think they can
It's a
be
fair
bad and they
argument.
can get away with it. Like I think you're more likely to get away with that. The other two, yes, one on each side of the ball. And I think that leads
You can't
us
hide that. Yeah.
to your number 10 and my number 9. And that's the wide receiver position because it was always going to be there. The only reason I don't have them at 10 is because I'm a big believer in Devontae Ross and what he can do. And it's hard to deny some of the hype building around Kyron Hudson right now and what he's capable of. And maybe there's a little more upside to tap into there. Trevor Pena gives you this floor. Like it's not about the returning talent. It's about those 3 guys could come in and like, I just have to believe that one of them is going to be good, right? Like legitimately good. Probably 2 of them. You're hoping it's 3, but that feels a little less likely. If it's all 3, then like this is like they might run away with a lot of stuff this year as a team and blow some teams out that maybe you don't even expect. But I think as long as you hit on 2 of those guys, you're in a good spot. If you hit on one guy, it's fine. You're still in a better position than last year. And it's a spot that you can get away with having one guy hit because there is some, there's Tyzier Denmark. Yeah, like you can backfill at other positions, but I think like chances are Tyzier Denmark or Kobe Howard or somebody will step up of the young group too. And
Brown.
you get one vet, one young guy, and all of a sudden if you need to play 12 personnel and that's it, that's fine. But I think in all likelihood, we're looking at they're an 11 personnel team because those 3 guys are at least starter level guys. And at very worst, they have 2 of them and someone else steps up. So yeah, I don't know. I'm pretty confident that they're going to be a lot better than last year. I think if we were to do this last year and we ranked the 10 positions, I would have ranked the receivers 13th. Like I think like they were so clearly so much worse than everybody else. I would have started making up positions that we could have thrown in there, like the water boy and the ball boy are both 11 and 12.
Yeah, because we did not rank the specialists. We did not include them in here because again, John never's going to punt anyway. So what's the point?
That's right. That's 100% right.
So I think, when I was doing radio earlier this week, I was on Sirius XM and we were talking about the wide receivers and they said, well, okay, but weren't people gassing up Julian Fleming last year? And like, what makes this year different? And that's the question I want to pose to you, John, because what makes this year's transfer portal crop of receivers different to you that we have a little bit more confidence in them, that we at least kept them within the parameters of the game and didn't put them 13th?
So I think what changed with Julian Fleming was that his physically he was not in the same spot that he was, and not from his own doing. By the way, he was in great shape, like put himself in position to succeed. His body just kind of betrayed him at a younger age than most, right? Like he was physically, taking a step back from a speed standpoint, from an athleticism standpoint. You see it all the time in the NFL, like where a guy is highly touted as a draft pick ends up going somewhere else because it's like, oh, he just needs a change of scenery, and he gets to a new place. It's like, oh, he's like 25 years old and it's not there anymore. And I think that happened with Fleming at 22, 23. Like he just didn't have the kind of requisite athleticism to excel. I think everything else was still there. It's just once that goes, it's like you're really trailing at that point. This year, I don't think. I mean, you hope, you don't really know, but like I don't think any of those guys are in that position where they left their previous program for a bigger role, and it turns out they just kind of didn't meet the standard or kind of weren't up to stuff.
They don't have that injury history that's so
yeah. And like two of the guys in Ross and Pena are transferring up, right? Like from Syracuse and from Troy, they're trying to go from, okay, I did it at a smaller program, can I do it at the biggest level? Kyron Hudson, I think, is a different scenario where they probably just needed a split there at USC, and like he wanted a bigger role and probably frankly wanted to feel valued more, and has shown the ability to do some high level things. And we've seen, like, he already looks better athletically than Fleming did last year, than other receivers did last year. And so I think as long as that sticks, and as long as those guys aren't in that position, that they're going to be in great shape. Like, and frankly, like Pena and Ross and Hudson, like the film's just better than Trey Wallace and Amari Evans, right? Like there's more consistency. There's more high-end playmaking. I just trust them more to be at the highest level week in and week out. And again, the fact that you have three of those guys rather than, I don't know, none last year. Like I thought Wallace was actually at that point. He just he was always hurt. Like he struggled with that too.
Remember the hope after West Virginia where it's like Evans, Wallace, you're like, okay, maybe.
Yeah. And I think this year that hope will be like abundant after these first three games, right? Like I think people will see what these guys are
grading on a curve too with that, right? I mean,
I don't know that
opponents.
I think, but I think they'll excel in a way that you can, you know what I mean? Like we'll be able to see it against Nevada and against FIU. Villanova, it's like such a step down in competition level, but like FIU and Nevada, like I think we'll be able to see like, okay, like even like Amari and Trey weren't doing this against the worst of the worst last, like Bowling Green, they weren't doing it, right? Like I think these guys will step up in a way that's
upset alert against Bowling Green last year at halftime.
Yes, I can't imagine. I mean, this is a jinx if I've ever heard one. So sorry, Penn State fans. I can't imagine that being the case against these three teams because these three teams are really bad in non-conference by design, by the way.
Man, can you? The tenor in Beaver Stadium, if that is even in question,
it's going to be a bad time. Yes. In the second quarter, I think.
The locals, the fans will be restless if that is the case. So there we have it, our 1 through 10, right?
And it's safe to say, though, as I make this deft pivot, that those three games are not among the 5 most important games on the schedule that we have. And let's get into this, right? We ranked them 1 to 5, meticulously putting the time and effort in to break everything down minute by minute. Of how we think these will play out. That's not true. But we have ranked the 5 games we believe are the most important on Penn State's schedule. I am pretty confident that we're not going to have the same list here. And if we do, I'm going to be stunned.
Now, I think most important is a very broad category that opens itself to the eye of the beholder. And that's where John and I are probably going to get into some very big differences here.
Do you want to do this 5 to 1 or 1 to 5?
Let's go 5 to 1. Let's build the suspense.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to say I'd like 5 to 1 for this more. My number 5 is Nebraska.
Senior day, you're scared.
I'm not scared. I just think it's a good team, right? Like this one's pretty simple for me. I think Nebraska's good. I've been saying this for like 6 years, and so is seemingly everyone else in college football media. So I'm probably going to be wrong again. Yeah, like I think Dylan Raiola is really good. and I think he has a chance to lead them to a better year than they've been having. I think 9 wins, 10 wins is possible for Nebraska. Maybe a chance at a playoff run, although I doubt that. I just think like when you're talking about a quarterback at that level coming into Beaver Stadium and it's potentially going to be cooled out, things can get weird that late in the year. You can get caught looking ahead, although they're not going to be looking ahead to Rutgers. I feel pretty confident saying that. I think that could be a time of the year where they have one loss and like it's all on the line, and this is kind of the last frontier they need to get through to ensure they're either in the Big Ten title game or have a bye, whatever. Like I think it's the last game on the schedule to me that is important. Like that. No, 1-0, they're all important. Yeah, I know.
Well, I think Greg
but
Schiano just put that on their bulletin board in Piscataway, John.
I'll put it on the bulletin board for them.
Print it out and mail it.
Rutgers already lost that game when it was put on the schedule. But yeah, I think Nebraska is a good enough team to warrant like having value late in the season. And the timing, I think, matters for that one more than anything.
Yeah, I did not put Nebraska on my 5. I think you made a compelling case.
Dylan Raiola hater, Audrey Snyder.
Yeah, right. That's just what we need. Need
Yes.
some Nebraska fans in my mentions. I do not need that.
At Odd Snyder 4, if you want to tweet at her for that take.
There we go. My 5th choice, which is probably going to raise some eyebrows, is UCLA.
Okay. I thought about this. I do not have them on my list.
Nico Mania might not really be anything if the talent around him isn't there, but I also put it on the, hey, Penn State, again, you're going across the country. Let's drum up the little runway grievances again. Let's get that stuff rolling. I do want to I need to check in on this. If Penn State, if they're still going to fly out Friday like they did last year, if they're going to head out Thursday, if there's anything, maybe lessons learned, best practices from the sports science end of it. So mine is a combination of logistics coupled with who knows what you're going to get from Nico. The on-field performance, I am not really concerned with, but again, we both just did highlight the safeties that we have some questions with. So if my former beloved Vol gives anyone any trouble out there, we'll have to find out. But yeah, I put him in the 5th spot. I'm not worried, but I think it's interesting.
Yeah, and I think the travel is the argument there, right? Like across the country. That being said, as I think James has said this before, and I think Andrew Nelson might have said it too when we spoke to him at an availability earlier in the summer. But like when you look at the data for those games, those cross-country games, usually the better team wins, right? And it's just like so happens that like teams are having to travel to play Oregon. Like, of course Oregon's gonna win that game. You know what I mean? Like that type of thing. And so I'm not overly worried about it. I think there's credence to it at number 5. Like I said, it was an option. To me, like they're not good. Like Nico's good. I feel good about that, but I don't believe in the receivers. Javian Thomas is a good running back, but I'm not a believer in Deshaun Foster, and I think he could be pretty quickly on the hot seat here. I think this is where it actually gets interesting now, though. At number 4, because to me, there's a top four that separates itself.
Interesting.
Who's your number 4?
Indiana.
Also my number 4.
Yes,
it is
we align on something.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to align the rest of the way. To me, it is about this is the best team, non-Oregon category, that is coming to Beaver Stadium. And I think that they have a chance to legitimately upset Penn State, right? Like this is the last team on the list that I think maybe has greater than a 25% chance at a win in Beaver Stadium. When I say last, I mean like, them and Oregon.
So the game is November 8th. That's what I was just pulling up.
November 8th. It's going to be the week after Ohio State, so there could be a letdown factor if they lose at Ohio State that you have to be cautious of. We've seen that before with James Franklin teams that they've kind of let one turn into two.
This is the
theory. Yes, this is the opportunity for that to happen. Fernando Mendoza is a really good quarterback. Elijah Surratt is a really good wide receiver. Mikael Kamara is an elite defensive end. Aiden Fisher's a very good linebacker. Like they have legitimate talent on Indiana's roster, and that quarterback wideout combo in Surratt and Mendoza is like, we could be looking at that as one of the best duos of the Big Ten by the end of the season. I'm a believer in Mendoza. I think the upside's enormous. They got so much out of Curtis O'Rourke last year that I think like this offensive staff could do a ton with someone like Mendoza with his talent. But yeah, I think they're one of 2 teams that can go into Beaver Stadium and win this year. And to me, that makes them an easy 4.
So we're saying you're above the Mendoza line.
All right, boo. Boo, get her out of here.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I think maybe in the preseason hullabaloo, the Hoosiers aren't getting as much love as perhaps they should
it's
be.
weird. Everyone's doing who's the Indiana of this year? Like, probably just Indiana. Like,
right? Yeah, like hello,
Illinois is not that. Yeah, Illinois is
Yeah.
not that good. Luke Altmaier is a little bit overrated, I think, at this point. But yeah, I think the Indiana this year is just Indiana, which like I think maybe make the playoff again. I don't know. They're good.
They're going to make it interesting. I mean, I think
Yes.
if you're Penn State, that's one of those where you say, okay, like you're, as much as we want to joke about the early portion of the schedule, and rightfully so, when you get into Big Ten play, like buckle up, it's on. And these are those games where if you just have a not so great day at the office, this season could really fall apart and take a pretty rough turn. So we're aligned on 4.
Real quick on Indiana too.
Mm-hmm.
I think if anything derails them, they have a tough schedule.
Yes.
I wanted to check this to make sure, but I think they can beat Illinois at home, and I think they can beat Iowa on the road, and that gets them to 10 in all likelihood. And 10 probably gets them to playoff. Anyways, we're aligned on number 4. I think my number 3 is probably your number 1.
So your number 3 is
Ohio State.
Okay.
I don't think it matters that much because I think Penn State can lose and be fine. And that's what this is about, right? Like, I think it's important from a perspective
how
standpoint.
They look if they lose.
I don't know. 11-1, they're in the playoff. Period. You know what I mean? Like, and so I think they can lose. This is it's on the road, so you don't get dinged as much. Like, people are willing to hand wave it away because it's a road game. It is, to me, the ultimate. This is the biggest game of the year, without a shadow of a doubt. From an importance standpoint, from a can't afford to lose or need to win standpoint, I just don't think it matters as much as the top 2, because frankly, I think most of us are picking them to lose this game, right? When I go to do season predictions, we'll have a record prediction at the end of this. I'm going to pick a loss, and I think it's Ohio State, right? Like, Audrey going against the grain now that she's out on her own. Now that she's working inside the Lions.
She's an independent woman. She's got some differing thoughts. Yeah.
But no, I just think like Ohio State's really good. Caleb Downs is the best safety in the country. Jeremiah Smith is the best player in the country. Like, you can lose that game, and people are like, yeah, shit happens. You know, like, it's okay. Fans, to be clear, will be upset. Yes. But I just think from a playoff, this to me, important to me is value added to winning a national title. Like, how important is it to that? And I think you can lose that game, because you can lose that game and say like, oh, they can still beat Ohio State in the neutral side of the playoff. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. You lose a different game, you can't say that as much, right? I think to me, this is the game that they want to win. Obviously, James Franklin wants to win it. They all want to win it because they've struggled with Ohio State. But at the end of the day, it just doesn't matter as much from a playoff standpoint. That being said, if we were ranking it from an importance to the fan base standpoint, I think it would be 1, 2, and 3. Like, I think it is just the by far 2 fans, and understandably so. Like, if I were a Penn State fan, this would be the one that I would circle as like, this is the game that I want Penn State to win the most. I just don't think from a resume standpoint, from a postseason standpoint, from a big picture standpoint, it just doesn't matter as much as the top 2 to me.
Now, with all that being said, John, sure, I hear you. But if you can't beat Ohio State with this roster, it ain't getting any easier in the coming years.
No, but I think if you can't beat them on the road, you can still beat them at home. And to me, that's the difference.
Site, right?
Or a neutral site, yes.
Yeah, I think, I mean, even last year, right, when we all looked at the bracket, one of the fun things would be like, man, what if we get Penn State, Ohio State again, right? Like, how can we? I
think Penn State could have won that game.
And that, to me, is the frustrating, maddening, crazy thing if you're a Penn State fan, which, of course, if you're listening to this, you probably are, or else you're.
Although we do have
during the workday, I don't know.
We have Ohio State fans who listen to this.
Oh no! You're going to fire them up like you always do.
Oh no! I think they'll probably enjoy hearing that they're so good that it doesn't matter if Penn State wins or loses.
No, but I think that's always the litmus test for Penn State is what can you do with this program. And when I sat down with Drew Aller this summer. Full story up on InsideTheLions.substack.com. Subscribers have already checked it out. It's been interesting to kind of gauge people's opinions and minds about Drew Aller, as it always is. But I asked him, I said, okay, Halloween weekend in the Horseshoe. I know you're going to tell me that 1-0, they all mean the same. Does this one mean a little bit more? And he was like, Yeah, just in terms of you're an Ohio guy, you want to beat them, but yeah, it's also important because Ohio State's the team that we want to be. We saw them win the national title, like all those goals that we want, they achieved. So yeah, I just think when you look at this roster, and again, we're talking about a group of players who've never beaten Ohio State, right? Like that to me is the significance. But I hear your argument with the resume and that you can still lose, and if you're 11-1, you're fine. But that will certainly not be the case with my number 3 team, which is probably your number 1.
I think my number 2. Who's your number 3?
My number 3 are the Hawkeyes of Iowa.
That is my number 2.
Okay.
And I view that as the top 2, I think, are you cannot lose these games. But this one specifically, losing to Iowa means you might not make the playoff because you could lose to Oregon and Ohio State if you lose to Iowa. Well, now, I understand that the Oregon game will have been played at that point, but if you're losing to Iowa, you're probably not in a good place, right? Like, I know there's been a lot of excitement about Mark Gronowski and like what he can do as their quarterback, and I do think Iowa's going to be better than people anticipate because Gronowski is like a legitimate quarterback. We'll see if they let him throw the ball, as Iowa tends to very much not understand the rules of football and that you are allowed to complete forward passes more than 3 times a game.
Pass it along.
Yeah, feel free. But yeah, I just think this is the kind of game that if it's the sort of the okay, you can take a deep breath now, because let's say Penn State loses to Oregon. If they lose to Iowa, it's like they have to beat Ohio State, right? And now you're in a position where your hardest game on the schedule is now a must win. If you beat Oregon, you can't go and lose. Like, you're probably the number 1 team in the country. You cannot go on the road and lose to Iowa, because then Ohio State becomes another, okay, you have to win this game, because now, you might go from hosting a playoff game to like a 10 or 11, 12 seed. The only way that this game doesn't matter is if they lose every game before it, right? Like, that's not going to happen. And so I just think, like, for them to reach the heights they want to reach, this is the bar that has to be the clearable bar that they have to get past, right? They have to show that they can go into a really difficult environment and dominate a team that is not nearly as good as them, because Iowa is good. They are going to have an elite defense. They might have an improved offense. They are not. Yep. Yes, they are not in the same tier as Penn State, Ohio State, and Oregon. They're just not. You cannot go into that environment, no matter how hard it is. An environment, by the way, that I believe it was 2021 they went into, and they were destroying Iowa before they got wrecked by injuries, and it ruined the game for Penn State, and they were unable to handle anything, really, in that situation. You cannot go into that environment with this team and lose that game. And it's possible that it happens. And that's why I think it's the second most important game on the schedule.
Now, the 1-0 focused on this team opponent thing that Penn State has bought into, like we've seen it time and time again. Keep in mind, after Iowa is an idle week, then it's Ohio State.
Yes.
I don't necessarily think Penn State will get caught looking ahead, but Kinnick Stadium is a tough place to play. I mean, I remember, again, the Juwan Johnson game, covering that game, and fans were talking so much crap to Saquon Barkley because the bench, I mean, you are like
it's on top
of the field. I mean, it's when you're walking behind the bench, like pregame or postgame, it's like the width between our shoulders, between the fans and the benches on both sides. And I remember at the end of the game, Barkley turning around and actually shaking hands with the fans behind him. And afterward in interviews, I was like, what was that about? Because they were Iowa fans. And he's like, I just thanked them because they talked a lot of crap all game, and it was really good, and it motivated me. And like, it was this really, but it's just such a special atmosphere. If you're a Penn State fan going to Kinnick Stadium this year, enjoy it, because it is one of the coolest things in college football.
And the wave wrecks me every time. Waving to the Children's Hospital. Like
beautiful gesture. Yes. It's like everything about covering a game at Kinnick Stadium is what I love. John and I will be on the road for everything this year. Flights already booked, all of that. So we'll be there. So I'll take a video of us trying to navigate behind the tight benches. I'll take a video of John crying during the wave.
You might be able to do that. I can't roll. It's entirely possible.
I mean, it's been a house of horrors for Penn State just playing Iowa in general. When you think back to the Adrian Claiborne game in a different era, that's when I was a student at Penn State and John was probably in diapers.
that would have been 2007, 6?
No, nine-ish,
No,
8,
8.
9, 8,
I
8.
would have been 14 or 15. Yeah.
Yeah, so probably not in diapers at that point, but
I would hope not.
but I just, to me, that is the game where you say, okay, if there's going to be like a upset potential for this season, it's going to be there. I was doing a Big Ten season preview for Town and Gown magazine, which if you're in State College, it's out, it's available. A bunch of us on the beat have stories in there. It was a very fun exercise for me during my unemployment era to be part of Town and Gown, and I enjoyed it. But and we'll get to my overall season prediction here in a bit, and I was consistent with my prediction, so I will be on here too when John and I do it. I have Penn State losing one game this season, and my justification is don't be surprised if it's not Ohio State or Oregon, just because Iowa scares me in that regard, that they have that upset potential. The crowd's going to be juiced. I mean, I remember post-game, John, a few years ago there, we're walking around at the Taquan Roberson game, and I'm stepping on bottles, like mini bottles of Fireball that were just littered throughout the field. Just fun atmosphere.
Yeah, I could see a world where they go 11-1 and the loss is Iowa.
Yeah.
That being said, the Ohio State game is looming, so I think if they lose Iowa, they're probably dropping Ohio State too.
At that point, your back is against the wall, and you got splinters coming out the other side. Yeah.
Yeah. My number one is presumably your number two, unless you're super high on Villanova, and that is Oregon.
Yes.
I think Oregon is number one because if they lose Oregon, they then have to win both Iowa and Ohio State, obviously, but largely because they have to go 1-1 in these two games. And I know they can go 10-2, lose to Oregon and Ohio State, and they'll still probably be in the playoff. For the narrative of this team, for the conversation around James Franklin, for the conversation around Drew Aller, you cannot lose both of those games and then silence doubters, right? Like if you go 10-2,
unless you win a national championship.
Right, but that's the thing. You go 10-2, you can't beat Oregon at home, you're probably not winning a national title, right? Like to me, that is the most important game on the schedule. I think they're going to win the game. I think they're just better than Oregon. I think that's frankly, what it comes down to. I think Oregon will be better than people think because this won't surprise anyone because I've been a Dylan Gabriel hater. But I think Dante Moore has a pretty good chance of being better than Dylan Gabriel this year. That better than Gabriel was in 2024, at least. Maybe not from a number standpoint, but from a helping the team win standpoint and creating, on his own rather than relying on others' great form standpoint. I think he could be a lot better. I just think it's the whiteout. It's the first time Oregon, as a member of the Big Ten, is coming to Beaver Stadium. I don't know. It feels like everything is on the line with that game because, again, if you lose, you have to win both of those other two games no matter what just to make the playoff. And even you can this is the if you lose this game, it creates it's like the biggest win for the haters, right? Like they get to say if you make the playoff that you still haven't beaten anybody because you're 10-2 and you lost to Ohio State on the road and Oregon at home. And maybe you go into the playoff and you play a team in the first round that isn't all that great. You get a win and then you lose in the second round, right? Like you're opening the door for everyone to say oh, here we go again. This game should shut everybody up if they win it. Oregon is that good. It won't because some people like to fire off those takes anyways. But Oregon is good enough that if Penn State wins this game, everyone is quiet. And winning this game pretty much guarantees you a playoff spot because they can lose to Iowa and Ohio State and still make it.
Someone mentioned this to me this week on when I was doing radio, and I hadn't thought of it this way. And again, if you're in the betting verse, the betting sphere, and you have some thoughts, opinions on this, is Oregon going to be favored in that game?
I think there might actually be lines out for this already. If you want to vamp for a second, I can find out.
Because so someone said to me, they said, well, yeah, Oregon's probably going to be favored in that game. And I stopped them. I said, I disagree with that. I said, maybe, again, I think the whiteout's probably worth something, right? You get a little bit of extra juice there in the betting lines because it's the whiteout. Also, the fact that Penn State should be very healthy at that point in the season, presumably because of non-conference play. I mean, I think they're really going to be able to navigate load management and those types of things because it's, again, when you're playing Villanova, it's essentially a third bye week. So I think in my head, I just assumed Penn State would be favored in that game. But again, I'm not a gambling woman, so I could be wrong on this. Have you found us any lines, John?
I am currently scrolling through all of the week 1 lines that are already up, which is just daunting that we
Oh,
are
boy.
that close. Let me
Yes, well,
check
anything
here.
September 27th,
So currently
7:30 p.m.
6.5-point favorite, Penn State.
Okay.
So that is according to one sports
Does
book.
the whiteout give you
I'm
three?
not. By the way, not naming sports books unless we start.
Getting a sponsor.
Yeah. But no, 6.5-point favorite according to one book. Like,
Okay.
I think that's about right. The whiteout usually gets you 2.5 to 3, right? Or home field at Beaver Stadium usually gets 2.5 to 3, and I think 3.5 on a neutral site is about right. Like, I think people are underestimating like that conversation about like Oregon being favored is underestimating just how good this Penn State team is, and like to me, that's the spread. Like Oregon might be favored if they played last year. I could see that in Beaver Stadium, but I think with this year's rosters, like it should be a Penn State touchdown favorite. That makes sense to me.
I'm gonna flip this question to you because it wasn't on our list, but I mean, we don't follow rules or scripts around here anyway.
Yeah, it's a good way to get me to say some stuff that I shouldn't too.
What game, as a college football writer, as a fan of the sport, right? Because we're a fan of this game because we know we certainly don't get into this industry for job stability and the pay, right? Like that's never been the thing.
Promise you that.
Spoiler alert. What game are you most looking forward to covering this year? It doesn't have to be the most important, doesn't have to be the most meaningful. Which one are you like, man, I can't wait to go there. I can't wait to see them come here.
I think probably Iowa. Like I just think there is something like I said, the wave is like one of the coolest things in college football. Everyone says that, and it may seem overplayed to say that, but it is true at this point. Outside of that, I don't know. I think probably and this is a chalk answer, but I think Ohio State. Like that's the kind of game. It might be number 1 against number 2, which would be incredible. But like
Big
that's
noon, here they come.
Yeah, probably yes. In all likelihood, I'd be stunned if it isn't. I don't know, but then you can make the argument the whiteout against Oregon is going to be like one of the coolest atmospheres. You know what? I'm going to change my answer. It's not even Iowa. It's the whiteout against Oregon because of Oregon coming across the country, because of like it's not a matchup that we see, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's like I mean, it's going to be the norm moving forward. They'll play them more frequently, but we don't see Penn State and Oregon's uniforms on the field against each other, right? The clash of that too, I think, is really cool. These modern, like so many variations of the uniforms in Iowa or in Oregon, and yeah, I'm sure Iowa has a lot of variations. By the way, nice slip up there. But I think and compare that to Penn State's like plain jerseys, like in the whiteout. I don't know.
All right, and there you have it. Sorry, we had some technical difficulties there at the end. I'm blaming John. I'm sure he'll try and blame me. But just keep in mind, that is not our full season preview episode. We will be back closer to the season with some more crazy picks, predictions, bold predictions, and all of that. But we wanted to get some of that stuff on the record for you now as we all try to kind of dust off the cobwebs. Again, John and I both have Penn State going 11-1, and turns out we both have them reaching the national championship game. So we will see what happens, but John and I will be back again recording this week. We'll get another look at Penn State on the practice field on Tuesday. So we'll have some thoughts, observations, analysis of that. As always, you can find John's work over at the CenterDailyTimes.com, and you can find my work on Substack at InsideTheLions.substack.com. John and I will have you covered all season long. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to rate, review, subscribe, tell a friend, and we will be back on the Nittany Dispatch. See ya.